Hello everyone. Today we are exploring point of view. Now, the objective is for you to be able to identify the point of view of your book club book based on this short review of point of view. So be keeping that in mind. The first one is the first person point of view, where the narrator is one of the characters. We just worked with this when we read The Circuit. First person pronouns are used, so you see I and me and my and mine. The narrator is the character in the story and may not be completely reliable. We find out only what this character knows, thinks, and witnesses. So everything comes from the narrator, from that character. An example. As I walked up the hill, I realized that the atmosphere was just too quiet. There was no sound from the cardinal, who was nearly always singing from the top of the maple tree. I thought I saw a shadow move high up on the slope, but when I looked again, it was gone. Still, I shuddered as I felt a silent threat pass over me like a cloud over the sun. So we have in this particular passage, we have pronouns such as I. Here we see I. The sound from the cardinal was nearly I again, right? It's all the narrator talking. So that's first person. Look at me. We see those pronouns in there that are first person pronouns. Of course, you remember those because you were quizzed on those and you did brilliant. Second person point of view. Moving right along, we have second person pronouns such as you, your, and yours. Most stories are not told in second person. Very, very few stories are told that way. However, we experienced a little bit of this in The Bridge Home. It is reserved for items of personal address. So we usually when we're writing letters, when we are reading recipes or creating recipes, or any kind of like informational, instructional material. An example of second point of view. As you walk up the hill, you realize that the atmosphere is just too quiet. There's no sound from the cardinal you know is almost always singing from the top of the maple tree. You think you see a shadow move high up on the slope, but when you look again, it's gone. You shudder as you feel a silent threat pass over you. You feel cold, like a cloud just passed over the sun. Okay, so we're going to circle all of the, look at this, you here and here, we have you everywhere, right? That's second person. Third person gets a little tricky. There's 3 different third person point of views that you need to be familiar with. So this is where many of your books are going to fall within one of these. So pay close attention. Third person objective. When you're being objective, you kind of are seeing almost like you're just kind of like watching on the outside of it all. And you really don't have a feel for what any one character is thinking or feeling. And it's kind of like this, the same when you are reading these kinds of books, right? The narrator is neutral, reports the facts as seemingly neutral and impersonal outside observer. Okay, they know just as much about this person, this character, as they know about this character. Can only report it when it's seen and or heard. So if there's a behavior or there's something that one character is noting about another character, it's the only way that we know what's going on. There's no feelings and thoughts, right? It's just that watchful observer, right? So for example, let's look here. Hansel walked ahead of Gretel. Gretel dropped breadcrumbs behind her as she went. Ahead of them, an old witch waited. Notice that the passage is all action. No thoughts or feelings are included. Okay, so we almost infer in those situations. Remember, when we infer, we take situations that are going on and we make an inference. What do we think based on the situation? That's where we're talking about with third person objective. You are being asked to infer based on the character's behaviors and actions. Third person limited is a little different. The narrator is not a character in the story, okay? But you see these third person pronouns like he and his and she, and we went over those when we went over a pronoun unit. But there's a limited knowledge. That's why we call it third person limited. There's limited knowledge because he or she only knows everything about one character. So it's almost like you learn what the one character is thinking and feeling, right? The limited knowledge of that character. Everyone else you don't know about. So let's look here. The girl walked up the quiet hillside. In the top of the maple tree, the cardinal tipped his head back and drew breath to sing. A dead branch cracked on the ground below the bird's perch. The man stepped on the branch and rattled the blades of grass as he moved behind the tree. He watched the girl come up the hillside toward him. Her gaze shifted quickly and warily from one shadowy area high on the slope to another, and she shuddered. She had a sudden feeling of fear and began to walk faster. This is all about her. He has an action in the scene where he is stepping on the branch and rattling the blades of grass, but they do not reveal what he is thinking or feeling. They're just giving you what he's doing, and that's it. They are revealing in the third paragraph down below, they are revealing her feelings. They're saying she had a sudden feeling of fear. So that's why, and I'm going to circle that right now, that's why this is considered limited, because we're getting the viewpoint of one of the characters, but not all of them. Move on. Third person omniscient. Omniscient means all-knowing. The narrator is not a character in the story. Okay, so that, remember, we always know that if the narrator is a character in the story, then that would be first person. So the narrator's not a character. You still have third person pronouns, he, his, she, hers, you know those. But in this case, the narrator can see into all of the characters' minds. So what everybody's thinking and feeling is being revealed through the story. As the girl walked up the hill, she realized that the atmosphere was just too quiet. The cardinal tipped his head back and drew breath to sing. But just as the first note passed his beak, he heard the crack of a dead branch far below his high perch, high in the maple tree. Startled, right? Startled, they're telling us how he felt. He looked down, cocking his head to one side and watching with great interest, while the man rattled the blades of grass as he tried to hide himself behind the tree. As the man saw her start up the hill, he moved quickly into the shelter of the huge old maple tree. If she saw him now, everything would be ruined. Look at, this is what he's thinking, right? She thought, now we're looking at what she thought. She thought she saw a shadow move high up on the slope, but when she looked again, it was gone. The man thought if he could stay hidden until she came within range, she'd have to talk to him, wouldn't she? The girl shuddered as she felt a silent threat. She felt a silent threat pass over her. It felt like a cloud creeping over the sun. So you can see that within that passage, you can determine what all of the characters are thinking and feeling. Now, pay attention to dialogue, because when dialogue is added to a story or a novel, right, you cannot use it to determine point of view. You need to ignore lines of dialogue when trying to figure out the point of view, because sometimes you'll see, and we saw this a lot even in Bridge Home, we saw a lot of you and someone talking to another person. Just because that you is in there doesn't mean that it's a second person point of view story. So pay attention to dialogue as you're reading your story and try not to take into account with that. So let's go back and review the author's point of view. You've got first person, you've got the clues, right? The pronouns and the definition. Second, and we saw that a lot with Seed Folks. Remember, Seed Folks was from different individual points of view of characters in the story, which makes the story so special. Second person, very rarely do we see items or literature written in second person, right? We use you and your and yours, right? Mainly for instructional pieces, not necessarily for literature that we would read and get a plot from. And then you've got your third person objective, limited, and omniscient. The objective meaning that the narrator is remaining objective to what everybody, they're just a watchful observer, right? Just kind of carefully watching everybody. No feelings, no thinking involved there. Third person limited is where you have the viewpoint of one character in the story, and then third person omniscient is everybody's revealed, the whole viewpoint. So there's your lightning review of point of view. You have this handout in your on your iPad. It's already been downloaded, I believe, to Notability, so you want to check for that. I believe we did that earlier in the year when we were working on Seed Folks. If anybody, if anybody needs it, you can go back and review that. You always have this presentation that you can go back and review. But as you're working through your book, if you come across one of your reading prompts and it asks you about point of view, this should help you to determine what that point of view is. And be prepared to provide evidence from the text, just like I provided short passages for you that would help to reveal that point of view and justify the point of view that you are naming. Okay, so have a great day.